Welcome, everybody. Let's start with a short moment of centering in the heart. Please close your eyes. Keep your back straight. Relaxation. We center ourselves in the chest area. Feeling of reconnecting with the depth of our being. The joy of coming back home in the heart. This infinite space of stillness. Keeping the awareness of the heart, of that pure stillness. Which is like a background of everything. We gently open the eyes. With the eyes open, there are perceptions, thoughts, and behind all of this, there is the same stillness. Thank you for being together. During this satsang, there will be a session of question and answers. Towards the end, the middle part of the satsang, and then in the end, another question and answer will be there. And in the end, I hope we'll be able to see all of us. The topics of this satsang are, we will continue with advice for the time of coronavirus. I'm going to speak about these so-called being values. We will continue to speak about that inner non-violent revolution, about ways of pointing to pure awareness, how to stabilize ourselves in the heart, about the fire of the heart. And we will learn a practice to awaken this fire of the heart. We'll also learn a practice for dealing with fears and cultivating fearlessness, and then some other advice and some practical elements relating to ways of increasing self-awareness. I don't know if we'll have time to pass through all of this, but let's start. And I will just come with a short recapitulation, so just for us to remember the context. So last week we spoke about solitude and loneliness, how we can start from loneliness and transform the bitterness of loneliness in the honey of solitude. I gave examples of solitude, the creativity that solitude can bring. You remember the example of Newton, but also the example of so many sages like Ramana, who stayed 16 years in Mauna, no speaking, Milarepa, 50 years withdrawing in caves, and Jesus fasting in the desert, the fathers of the desert, and many, many mystics. We also spoke about the fact that it is important in our times not to be a part of the problem, just identified with all this wave of fear and agitation and confusion, but to be a part of the solution. And this self-awareness and all the advice are how to be a part of the solution. We also spoke about the royal status of human beings on this planet, but how unfortunately humans are acting like a cruel, greedy king, lying, betraying the Mother Earth, a king that ignores the sisters and brothers, the animals, the plants, the air, everything. And it is not about somebody else. We are all karmically responsible for this situation. And it's a tacit acceptance of this absurdity. And this should stop. And observing such obvious absurdities happening everywhere, especially in such times, is a way of waking up, realizing that as in the dawn of awakening from a dream, So when you just start waking up from a dream, you feel that something essential is missing. And then your whole inner world is shaking. You realize that you were asleep. And it's the same now. This sense of presence is like bringing a conscious presence, me here now. What a miracle. We also spoke about those bumpers or buffers for these obvious absurdities. So there are these paradoxical situations that are happening, and then still there exists some, what we name bumpers, those rigid inner structures that attenuate any glimpse of awakening, any clarity of this realization. So these bumpers would be like structures that prevent us from seeing the absurdity of these situations. And because of this, we need to develop an inner willingness to wake up. It is an intention without an object, without a specific story, just this enough. An intention that brings a shift of consciousness, a change. And you remember last week I spoke about Gandhi idea, and following this Gandhi's model, we can come to an inner non-violent revolution. It is a non-violent because it's not about fighting or blaming others or blaming our emotions or our mind tendencies. It's not even about controlling with our own will these emotions, but is simply about embracing them from this space of presence, from this self-awareness. So this is the very paradigm of a non-violent revolution. Otherwise, it will be just a civil war inside ourselves, inside our mind. Thoughts fighting each other, emotions, frustration, repression, and so on. But this is about something different. This is about a center, a stability, a point of spiritual gravity, which is the heart. Speaking about this importance of the centeredness, great Zen master, Vietnamese Zen master, Thich Nhat Hanh, said, when the crowded Vietnamese refugee boats met with storms and pirates, if everyone panicked, then all would be lost. But if in that situation, at least one person on the boat remained calm and centered, it was enough, because it was able to show the path for everyone to survive. And this can be seen also as a metaphor. We can understand this in a broader sense. Somebody centered, somebody awake, that is not lost in the circumstances of life, is enough for awaken or to show a path for so many. This is what Jesus, Buddha, Ramana Maharshi did. This is what in the legends of the medieval, um, the legends about the Holy Grail, Parsifal did. We'll not go into this legend now, but the point is that we all can do this centeredness, and we all can be centers of quietness by first quieting ourselves inside and then being a model for others. But this, especially in these times, requires a lightening of this fire, of a fire of awareness. And it requires commitment, it requires a sobriety of presence. For example, in these times, it's not only about the practice. Of course, in Hridaya, we are giving many practices for increasing this commitment, determination. We are speaking about this, but it's also about a sense of sobriety, a sense of being happy with what it is, to cultivate simplicity, which would be a way of resonating, a silent resonance with all that are in suffering. It's not that I am dying because I'm not having the morning croissant at breakfast. And I'm saying this, and you don't need to feel guilty because you had, if you had the croissant this morning. It's not about this, but it's more about lighting this fire of awareness, of love, in which the bumpers, those who attenuate that clarity, are slowly, slowly dissolving. So a purification of the subconscious mind can happen through this fire, through this determination of being. This is again a way of giving ourselves conscious shocks. As I said, many people now are living in unconscious shocks. It's just happening and is confusing and chaotic. But realizing this chaos, we can give to ourselves conscious shocks like me here now. Rumi speaks about this importance of the fire. He said, it is the fire of the heart, the burning of the heart. I want this burning, which is everything, more precious than a worldly empire. And he also gave this recommendation. He said, set your life on fire. Set your life on fire. Seek those who fan your fire. And seeking those who fan our fire, he's referring to people, but equally to circumstances, inner values as well, that can open our soul and bring this passion, this aliveness. So my advice is to see this fire as the longing of our soul, as the waking up agent, as a way of saying in a loving way, no, it's enough. And the source of this fire is in the depth of our heart. As you know, an open heart has this enthusiasm. We are enthusiasts, and the Greek term entheos means, from which enthusiasm comes, means God within. We all have God within, but now in this enthusiasm, it's obvious. In the Oriental tradition, it was named Sahridaya. So to be always in contact with this fire. Often we want a change, but that need for change slowly diminish. The bumpers are coming, and then this fire is not so intense, and that need for change, which was so obvious, so intense in those moments, like we couldn't live without it, then slowly diminishes, and then we don't have that connection with the depth of the heart. And because of this, that intensity or determination and that commitment is not there anymore. So that's why Rumi said, it is the fire of the heart I want, more precious than a worldly empire, more precious than everything, this aliveness, this presence. So what is this? Is like a pure intention in the Oriental tradition, especially in the Kashmir Shaivist tradition. This had even a concept associated. So it was a notion we are speaking about. It is named Icha, or pure desire, or pure will. A will that doesn't have an object, is just a fire, is just an explosion of awakening. And this fire awakens from a lucid heart. In yoga, we also have a very inspiring concept, which is tapas. Tapas comes from the Sanskrit root tap, which means to shine, to give up heat, to radiate like the sun. And this is what our heart is doing when we are aware of it. And tapas, in a technical way, is seen as, or is translated as self-control or cultivation of willpower. And it involves the commitment to a certain yoga practice, or to do meditation every day, and so on. In classical yoga, tapas is a means for purification, a burning or setting on fire in the physical body, in the psychic structures, in the mind. Everything is purified by this commitment to truth. So I'm going to speak about this tapas now, not as a rule or as a technical element, but as this fire. So how to develop this fire, seen as an essential power of redemption, of waking up. So we may ask why we would need this fire now. Let's look at the actual situation, and we can see even more clearly why. The situation now was compared with a war. Some are in the front line, people who struggle and try to survive, people who die, people who are helping, the medical staff, the doctors, which are passing through a lot of efforts, a lot of sacrificing, frustration for the lack of many things, mass breathing apparatus and so on, but also frustrations, and we need to understand this, for a lack of inner clarity. So with all the compassion and understanding of the difficulty of these situations, definitely a deeper clarity there, even that centeredness, even when it seems overwhelming, can help, even when you see people dying. So this is the front line, this is the hardest situation, and people are involved there. Then there is another group of people who are still working in different interactions with people, there is a risk to get sick. And then the third layer would be people staying at home. And this can be seen as a duty or a kind of heroism of passivity, but it's paradoxical because it happens sometimes it happens out of cowardice. People just stay at home because they are afraid, complaining. So we are that kind of people staying in the third line, complaining, overwhelmed by fears, reading newspapers, not complaining that we don't have enough toilet paper, or being afraid that we will not have enough to eat, and so on. So we are this kind of frivolous human beings. And then don't we need a shock? Don't we need that fire? We are in the same kind of war, but the majority of us is fighting in pajamas in bed. And for us, the front line is the Netflix or the Facebook and so on. So like in a mirror, the abnormal, the alienation tends to become the normal. And of course, this is happening not only in such times. There was a great mystic, Evelyn Underhill, a Christian mystic. She wrote a very beautiful book, which was very much appreciated, especially in the first part of the 20th century, the mysticism. And she said something very interesting. She said, for practical purposes, we have agreed that sanity consists in sharing the hallucinations of our neighbors. So for practical purposes, we have agreed that sanity consists in sharing the hallucinations of our neighbors. And we don't need to do this. So then there is a need of this fire. There is a need of courage. And we can say that this situation with the coronavirus helped objectify and make more clear that there are people, and we can be in this, people who can face the situation, are ready to face it, ready to do any sacrifice for this. And for such people, even if it's hard, if it is difficult, even if it's difficult, they are somehow potentiated by secret powers, by that fire of their heart. And then there are many people who act out of cowardice, overwhelmed by fears. And we can be somewhere in between, and we can learn how to change this, how to go beyond these fears. First of all, we may ask why. Why should I get rid of this fear? For what? Well, Buddha would answer saying that because simply this is ignorance and it will lead us to suffering. It's just a mechanic way of living. So imagine a film scenario in which an experiment is done. An alien civilization from another planet would want human beings to be totally manipulated, to totally obey their orders, no matter what, controlling them completely, through different means. So wanting human beings acting like robots. How could ever be possible this? How this would happen? And the answer would be two steps or two things. First, cutting the connection with their heart. So cutting the connection of ourselves with the depth of our being. So even when we speak we reconnect with ourselves. This seems paradoxical, but this shows that somehow in many moments we are not connecting with ourselves. So cutting this connection with the depth of our being, with the heart, with the intimacy of our being, and this would be the cause. And then the effect would be the core values. Those essential values will become meaningless. People wouldn't have core values. And in this, of course, you can be manipulated. Of course, you are completely lost. So these core values, the core, the word core comes from the Latin cor, which is the root of the words cœur in French or corazón in Spanish, and refers to this heart. So the core values are the values that are radiating from the heart. Now, I'm going to speak about what in psychology was named B values, being values. This came from Abraham Maslow, quite renowned psychologist. He was kind of creating this so-called humanistic psychology, one of the founders of it. And maybe you heard about him, especially in connection with the hierarchy of human needs. He simply made a pyramid with human needs. At the basis, there are the psychological needs, then are the safety needs, and then at the top of this pyramid are that is the self-actualization, so the need to fulfill our potential. So starting from those basic instinctual needs to more refined needs of a human being. But also he spoke about what he named these being values or core values. He was simply contemplating what feeds the human soul. What can feed the human soul? So we have food, and we give so much attention to food to nourish our body, but then we nourish also our energy body by breathing, and then in yoga through pranayama. But then how can we feed this soul? And this question is a valid question. And as a practice, I suggest, so as a first practice, I suggest to ask yourself to meditate. What would be these values that resonate deeply within you, the highest value which motivate you? So it is important to look for such answers, for such, what is motivating me in the spiritual practice, in the spiritual journey? What is that which this fire express itself? Because you remember we spoke about this fire as unconditional impetus, that pure intention with no expression. But then that energy starts being manifesting in what we would name these values we would, or human beings would fight for, or will keep as a guideline in their life. So just question, what keeps you in connection with the heart? What prevents you to become a robot? To be completely asleep? To be totally manipulated just by external values, money or whatever things? What prevents me to be really alive? Maslow came to this in the end of his life, and he didn't manage to finalize a list with all these values. And I don't even consider that is an absolute list of this. But along these being values, which he mentioned, was truth. So if I stick to truth, I will not become a robot. Yes, so this seems, or if I stay in love, an unconditional love or unconditional compassion, I will not become a robot. So truth, love, spontaneity, beauty, simplicity, playfulness, goodness, all these are being values Abraham Maslow is speaking about. And this is why fear cannot lead to the heart. Fear will lead to sleepiness, to slavery, because it's not a being value. It's not a direct radiance of the heart. Of course, ultimately, like everything else, is a radiance or expression of the pure consciousness of God, of the supreme reality. But it is an indirect expression of it via the ego. So via the constriction of the egos, different emotions are appearing. All these values of the personality, those lower values of the personality, fears, projections, and so on. And then it's a direct, not an indirect, but a direct radiance of the heart, which would be these pure values. Now, in reality, it is not just that these values are feeding our soul, but the awakened heart is feeding them. So when our soul is open, when our heart is open to that depth of our being, that pure intention, that fire, that willingness, that pure willingness to wake up, which is beyond any concept and beyond any attribute, is radiating and is feeding these values. So these values can help us to remember the heart, and then the connection with the heart, the connection with ourselves radiates. From an open heart radiates beauty. And cultivating beauty opens our heart. So it's like a breathing in this radiating heart. This is the very meaning of bhakti. Bhakti, it's translated as devotion. It's this even a form of yoga, bhakti yoga. But etymologically, bhakti means mutual love, which means a love from this personality, from this limited me, with, of course, it's in connection with these values. It's a longing for truth or a longing for beauty, a longing for that infinity of my being. So it's love from my personality towards that infinity, and at the same time is a love from that infinity, an embrace of that pure consciousness of all this personality. Mutual love. Bhakti, mutual love. So we can say that a quality life is cultivating when we open more to the heart, when we open to this being values and that self-actualization Abraham Maslow is speaking about. So we cultivate and we honor these values: beauty, truth, spontaneity, joyfulness, naturalness, authenticity. And then, so this is one step, and then we can go even further into that pure being. When even the most discrete personal nuances of such values are dissolved in that unfathomable, mysterious, embracing reality that contains all of them and is beyond any particular expression. Now, the materialist would say, when you are starving, you don't need poetry. First of all, we are not starving now. I mean, for the most of the Western world, starving is not happening. It's just a fearful projection. So people tend to argue or to reject such invitation to higher realities, but saying, well, but you know, when really suffering or problems will appear, you drop all this. You don't need poetry. So first of all, this is not such a situation anyhow for most of us. And second, even in such situations, I am saying I do need poetry more than ever, because it supports me tremendously in dealing with challenges. But again, this is a matter of trust. It's a matter of cultivating this connection and feeling it. If we don't feel it, of course, we may say, well, it's not possible what we are speaking about. No, it's not true. But when that connection is there, it's a trust. Even when it's not, but you have a memory of it, you know. So this is a surrender. This is what surrender means. You surrender the basic needs, those basic needs, to those being values. So your fears or the need to protect this body or just shelter and food and those instincts, you surrender to being values, to compassion, to love. And then even higher, to this heart, to this pure being freed from any attribute. And this is awakening. Now, often we are falsely focus and obsess ourselves with these so-called need values, which are at the lower part of the pyramid Maslow was speaking about, because now we are just in an anticipation of fear. What will happen? What if? And so on. But this is not real. It's just a projection. I remember somebody making a funny affirmation. They said, you know, it was this beautiful, inspiring story about the Italians singing from their balconies. And this is, you see, an affirmation of these being values, that in spite of the suffering, we are honoring. And it's so refreshing and is so inspiring, this, when in spite of those need values, we are, you know, honoring these being values. But then somebody said, well, I would also go on the balcony and sing, but you know, I cannot go outside on the balcony because my balcony is full of toilet paper, of potatoes, corn, rice, and so on. So we focus on our need values when we totally identify ourselves with this body-mind condition. So when in Hridaya we speak about the importance of self-inquiry as a way of connecting with ourselves, is about also radiating or being able to radiate these being values, to trust more in that than in the body-mind. So it's like It comes with the whole package. I am either identified with this body ego story, and then yes, everything is about toilet paper and food and so on, or it's about who am I? And then from there, it may come this longing and that power to sing in spite of those difficulties. Some still would say, well, yes, but if you would starve, or if your children will starve, you would act in a different way. And I say, not necessarily. Not necessarily. Would Buddha act in a different way? Would Ramana fight and hit somebody else out of hunger? Definitely not. It's a beautiful story of Thich Nhat Hanh, who was asked by publisher. Was a kind of silly question. He said, well, if you would be the last Buddhist in the world, and somebody would come with a gun threatening you and wanting to kill you, and then you would also have a gun, and then would you kill that person? Because killing that person, you would save Buddhism. Otherwise, if he would kill you, the Buddhism will be over, because you would be the last Buddhist. And to this silly question, Thich Nhat Hanh answered, no, I would not kill, because killing would deny the very core, the very essence of Buddhism. But if I would allow myself or to happen what would happen, I'm sure that the spirit of Buddhism will continue. The spirit of Buddhism, as the spirit of any authentic spiritual path, is continuing. And this is what in the Oriental tradition was named Sanatana Dharma, the eternal law, which, apart from the different contexts and the different personal stories of, or civilization stories of a religion or another, which has an apogee and then decline and so on, there is a Sanatana Dharma. Love is honored so much in Christianity, but love is not about Christianity. Compassion is not just about Buddhism. Compassion is. Compassion is about our heart. So this is what Francis of Assisi did when confronted with his father. His father was asking for his money and his values and his property, considering that in this way he's owning somehow his son, Francis, and he just undressed himself and remained naked in a public plaza, just throwing everything that would connect or depend on his father, showing that it is not those values that are more important, but that love that is in his heart. And then Mirabai, a princess who became a wandering ascetic out of love of Krishna. So from that soft bed of a princess, she would sleep on the earth. And being a princess was not happy or just confined in those rules. Being an ascetic, she was, or a wandering, a sadhu, she was so happy because of the love of Krishna. And there are countless examples like this. Buddha as well, he renounced the life of a prince. Why? No? Why? Why these values to renounce to this safety of life? Well, because our heart has higher values, and it's not as some would say, as even Abraham Maslow would say, we first need to satisfy fully those basic needs, and only after that is the self-actualization. No, it can happen that that awareness of the heart can embrace all this. Artists also are examples of this kind of sacrifice. They sacrifice sometimes their relationship, their well-being, and even their life in order to express this beauty and truth. It was an inner calling in that, and it is an inner calling in such artists, more powerful than those instinctual needs. Or we can say this artistic longing becomes like an instinctual need. It's not an instinct because it's conscious, but is so fundamental, so basic. And while, of course, we can question the behavior of some geniuses or artists, still we cannot contest, and there will be a lasting gratitude for their creation, for that honey of such aesthetic expressions. So, and we all have this grace, or we are under this grace of the teachings of Buddha, or the teachings of, or the poems of Mirabai, simply because they had the power to renounce this. Hafez, the same way, this fire was so much present there. So even dealing with painful emotions, a trauma with a meaning is much more easy to heal than a trauma or a wound which doesn't have any meaning. We are simply lost. But a wound with a meaning can be easily embraced and healed. And this finding meaning is not just about no rational things or finding symbolic means or consolation or personal healing. It's not about this, but it's about a surrendering to and being guided to the spiritual heart. So it's not a rational meaning, but a devotional meaning to this. Thus, we realize that cultivation of beauty, truthfulness, unconditional love, all these being values, is not about a hobby or an option, but a duty as conscious human beings, a part of this inner revolution. The cultivation of love, of beauty, is our sacred task for the freedom of our souls. You have a sacred task to love, to be truthful. Because in the end, the spiritual heart doesn't ask for adepts, it asks for love. It's not about formal aspects, but about that reality. And that's why in moments like this, our primary duty is not to identify with our old patterns, compulsions, and pay obsessive attention to our personal desires and subconscious tendencies, but to honor the heart. When emotions feel overwhelming, realize that they may be way too powerful to deal with them in a personal way. It's not about a personal fight or me trying to control this. Only by surrendering to this infinite power of the heart, the grace can be felt. And this grace is simply the radiance of the heart. The healing of our wounds is happening in such space. When we are doing this, we realize that we are not just these shallow layers of basic needs, but the stillness. And then we can say, as Rumi said, to feel joy in the heart when sorrow appears. So we are fully responsible for our own self-awareness. We are fully responsible for our self-awareness. This space of the heart is a loving, gentle fire that burns our obsessive compulsions, fears, desires. And this is where we can withdraw ourselves every day. It is a practice for our daily life, for more and more moments. So I will give you now a practice, a short guided meditation, the practice of the sacred fire, the heart on fire. It's a practice which can be found in different traditions as well, in different connotations, sometimes in Sufism, in Rosicrucian tradition, the esoteric Christianity. So let's just for a short moment close our eyes and bring the awareness in the chest area. And visualize your heart surrounded by fire. There is a sacred fire in and around your heart. This fire is the very expression of truth and love. Even if you cannot visualize very well, there is a sense of fire. Feel an intimacy with that fire, a friendship with it. If this fire brings a sense of fear, bring that fear in this loving fire, melt it. Visualize it as a radiating sun, as the light, as the source of all life. And love this fire. If it is too abstract for feeling love for fire, you can imagine in your heart the presence of a very dear friend or of your lover or of Ramana or Jesus. Whoever brings aliveness, love, fire. that person is blazing inside, shining brightly in that flame. This fire radiates an intense longing for you as you, for freedom. And this fire gives steadiness, wisdom, nourishment. It is a nourishing fire. It is your steadiness, centeredness, which is dissolving fluctuations, impermanence. It is a stability in fluidity. It embraces and melts all fire, all fears, limitations. Now, be that fire. It's not just that you visualize, you become fire. It's a quiet, steady, courageous presence, flowing, bringing this essential light of awareness in every situation, emotion, thought. And while gently opening the eyes, let this fire continue to glow, to shine there. It is happening. The thoughts are at one level, the perceptions, thoughts, this empirical world is at one level, but then it's like a seal of fire on our heart, the fire of our aliveness. So this touch of fire strengthens our souls, nourishing all these being values we are speaking about. And how this commitment to awareness can be applied in our daily life, you simply live or let this fire radiate in no matter what circumstance, or let this fire inspire you in yoga, in meditation practice, but also in different attitudes. For example, I'm going to stay in quarantine. I finished this imposed quarantine, but I'm going to stay um, at least one more week, just as a way of resonating with people who are so afraid, as a way of supporting in a subtle way those who are struggling with this. And also, it's a commitment not to leave this the place, and this means that the food is diminishing. There are just for more apples, not so much just half of a package of rice and some things, but still some enough potatoes and some things there. I don't know how much all this week will flow. It's not that there is nobody who can help me or provide food or support. There is, but I don't want. I don't want, simply because I feel that this is a way of bringing this awareness or this presence, touching it in a more conscious way. Of course, I'm not saying that this is what you should do or everybody should do. Of course, this may come in conflict. You may say, well, we need to reinforce our immune system now, and it's a need to eat more fruits, or I don't have, and I don't consider that this is important. I consider that honoring these being values is much more important. Yes, it's just only with a cat, my good friend, a cat. I needed to take care. I cannot afford to put her on asceticism, because this would be, she would meow a lot. But otherwise, it's about just a subtle way of self-imposing. And this is definitely not an ascetism. It's not really ascetism. I would offend the great yogis or the fathers of the desert if I would say that this is ascetism. But it is, and it's not about suffering, but it's about being aware, being present, about nourishing this fire of awareness, of compassion with those who are really in need. Let's take a break for some questions. There is still a lot, or at least I prepared a lot to share, but it seems that we may not manage. So I will start answering some of your questions. It seems that what I see here is just notes or just I love this, thank you for sharing, but not really questions. If you have a question, you can raise your hand as well, and we can do this. So, Andrew, I hope you can speak now.
Namaste, Sahajananda.
Namaste.
Yes, I guess the biggest question is how to. I see a person I see a lot of people on my social networks and my social media feed, and myself getting involved in a lot of sort of the new world order, conspiracy kind of arguments, and it's how to maintain a centeredness on truth while still looking into the possibility that this might actually be a real thing that's happening. Other powerful people trying to control our decisions.
Yes, as I said, there is, I mean, just staying in this bitterness and just maintaining some such conspiracy theories and believing or adhering to it is not the essential point. I mean, I'm not saying that this is true or not true. Last satsang, I said, in the end, this is not the last question. This is not the thing that indeed it was somebody guilty or is somebody wanting to do this. The point is that it is possible. So all these conspiracy theories are pointing to the fact that people more and more are mistrusting this technological civilization, this culture. More and more people are not believing that this can bring a science with consciousness. And then this is, I would say, the point which we should address, because this is more essential. Of course, we would need answers. It's good to have some answers, if possible. Again, in this skepticism, we may not know what really happened and what was the source of all this and so on. It's good to have some answers, but more than this is the fact that in 1 year, it can happen even worse. And it can happen in so many other ways. That's why I'm saying that it's not about blaming, it's more about transforming and starting an inner revolution, an inner non-violent revolution with ourselves. Because cultivating these being values and transforming ourselves and creating a wave like now it seems impossible. But even what happened with that revolution, nonviolent revolution with Mahatma Gandhi did, it took years and years and years and years and a lot of defeat, and still continuing. The perseverance of that brought that shift. And that showed that weak people can make, or what seem to be weak people, or what seem to be people who cannot have any power against a higher force, can still matter and can make a huge change. So this is why I'm speaking about this importance of this inner transformation. And you may not change the world, but at least you change yourself. You say no to ways in which we are continuing, and how we are continuing is a matter of a discernment. It's a matter of realizing through this fire. It's this fire of awareness, of presence, which will stop, or at least will contribute to stop. So this is my advice.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Alexei?
Namaste, Sahaja. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I have a very specific question. As a writer of poetry and fiction who makes a living off of that, what sort of message or theme should we be conveying to help people in this specific moment? Is there a direction you would give, or just to remain in the heart and see what appears?
Basically, this is all what I'm all that I'm speaking about is exactly about this.
Mm.
This is the message. So these satsangs are going to be the message. So cultivating the awareness essentially is cultivating this self-awareness, being conscious about the ways in which we were unconscious till now. And we were supporting in a tacit way all that happened. And if more and more people would do this, there is a hope of a transformation. We need to say in a more profound way no to all these situations. So yes, self-awareness and in this love and embrace and courage to go beyond this. But again, uh, it's not by focusing outside that the answer would come, but focusing inside and honoring this fire and this being values is what changes the perception and can change the world as well. And I'm going to speak about this hopefully in this satsang and maybe later next week as well. Yes?
Yes, thank you so much, Sahaja. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So other questions about online retreat with me? Yes, we are considering doing an online retreat. We will announce all this, but we will not focus on this now. So let's continue. I'm going to give you a practice. I said that I'm going to give you an attitude for fear removing. It's a mudra. It's a simple practice. And it is named Abhaya Mudra, the mudra for fear removing. I will start with a short poem by Rumi. I said, "Oh love, I am frightened, but it's not you." Love said to me, "There is nothing that is not me. Be silent." So, Abhaya Mudra is the gesture of fearlessness. Mudra means in Sanskrit gesture, attitude, or seal. And Abhaya in Sanskrit means fearlessness. So it's a mudra, a gesture that provides safety, reassurance, dispels fears, accords divine grace, and according to many Indian traditions, also can bring bliss. This is one of the earliest mudras or gestures depicted in many of Hindu, Buddhist, Jainist, Sikh images. So it's a very old attitude. Some say that it's older than Buddhism. I would integrate a new element as well. So start by bringing the awareness in the heart and bring the right hand on the chest for a few seconds. And then with this centeredness in the heart, you bring the right hand upright with the palm facing outwards. The fingers are relaxed, the palm is relaxed. And you continue in this way. This is Abhaya Mudra, which gives protection, peace, benevolence. If you saw the images of Shiva, Shiva Nataraja, the dancing Shiva, you saw that there also there is a representation. He has a hand, a second right hand, because he has two right hands. In one, he has a damaru, a kind of drum, which creates a vibration, the source of the whole universe. And with the second hand, has this mudra. In the left hand, he has a fire. Again, the fire of this awareness. But this right hand, the second right hand of Nataraja, is the Abhaya Mudra, is in Abhaya Mudra, giving protection from evil and ignorance, and grace for those who are following the Dharma, the spiritual law. Abhaya Mudra removes fears and creates a sense of security, kindness, power, peace, brings awareness, altruism, strengthen the internal resolutions, the commitments that we have, calms the mind, settles our emotions, especially those caused by fear, like anxiety, anger, irritability, and so on. It is soothing the nervous system and thus helping relaxing the body. It brings a sense of spiritual strength, an inner strength, a commitment to the heart. So we can see it as a silent, loving way to say no to phobias, to fears. And you simply keep it like this. Whenever you feel overwhelmed by fear or problems, still there is this, I recommend this connection with the heart and keeping the mind on the heart, the hand on the heart for a few seconds before, because this softens the quality of this attitude. It's not about a denial or a rejection of something, a dry or aggressive stop, but is a loving way of embracing and saying no in a loving way. In the early times, people used to have this mudra for greeting strangers to show them that there is no sign of violence. There is also a story related to Buddha. Even in the Buddha community, greediness and ego was present, and is the story of Devadatta, cousin of Buddha, who grows so much in this pride and selfishness that he wanted to kill Buddha. And he just put a mad elephant, so pushed an elephant, in front of Buddha, on the path of Buddha, with this hope to kill Buddha. And then Buddha made this gesture, who instantly made that elephant, that furious elephant, become calm and peaceful. And you can try it also with, I don't know, aggressive dogs and so on. So this is a practice. You can do it with the eyes closed, centered in the heart. A gentle way of saying no to fears. removing fears, keeping this centeredness in the heart. Practice it every day for 10-15 minutes in one stretch, or you can do it 2-3 times per day, 10 minutes or so, or how long you can keep it even in meditation. There are many statues of Buddha or different stages represented in this, with this attitude, with this Abhaya Mudra. So we have also a beautiful practice for removing fears, a traditional gesture. And then you can conclude by keeping for some moments again the hand on the heart, and then this is the simple practice. Another form of practice, so another practice which I'm going to offer to you is in connection with what we just spoken about this being values. So what are our motivating values? So the times we are spending now with our families or by ourselves is also time to objectify what are our motivating values. So in the end of the day, and we can now refer to this day, so even now we can briefly contemplate. We can evoke the whole day. So think of what we did today, not just the activities, but also the intentions, the compulsions, the impulses that were behind our activity. So think about this day, contemplate on this day, what happened and what was there. How much of our activities were prone to old habits, to which means mental inertia, watching a lot of TV, just going in, reactivity or conspiracies, theories, or overeating, or obsessions for the body, sexual addiction, or how much was simply a longing for being more with yourself, or as yourself, as stillness, as self-awareness, love for others, compassion. It's a simple way, and in the end, I mean, this is what matters, no, and shows us what is and what is not our. We may pretend or we may consider ourselves very spiritual, evolved, and we are considering that we are so much connected with the heart. But then, if that way in which the quality of our life and the motivations of our actions are not so, this means that it's not about blaming or creating a sense of guilt in this. It's just about objectifying. So it's simply about questioning in what ways this day brought you closer to your heart, to your true intuition. Or we were again just controlled by mind habits, overpowering our critical mind, and so on. So bring this awareness of the fire of the heart as a power to commit to higher values. And that can change our actions. So after we made such a contemplation, we again reinforce this fire of the heart. this fire of the heart and all these being values, what is really relevant for me? Beauty matters for me. And today I didn't honor this beauty. I should honor more beauty. I should give more time to breathe love or these higher values. I should contemplate about compassion more than just be brought in conspiracy theories or building up just anger and frustration and so on. Because this is not useful. It's poisoning my soul and it's not going anywhere. So bring that fire and let that fire inspire you. Let that fire from that. So you see, it's the fire which is an unconditional impulse. It's a pure intention. It's a pure intention towards what we are, towards awakening, towards presence. And then from that, or in connection with this, like waves of it, all these being values. And we simply stay in them, nourish them. And we stay with them. And then in the end, we are just, again, bringing everything to that fire of the heart, to that purity. Because beyond a specific expression I may want to, yes, the fire can go if I just focus my mind on conspiracy theories and on frustration, the fire can go there. And I can be very passionate about this. But it's just the way in which my ego would take that intensity, which is always, I mean, in many situations is there. This is how even people in spirituality get diluted, or sectarian attitude or extremism is happening. So that fire is directed in a different and in a wrong way. Rather, keep that as, the power of being in that purity, and drop stories, drop anything, and remain in this nakedness of being. I am. So you can practice this. And then another attitude, which can also be seen as a practice, another way of dealing with the situations now, the practice of gratitude. The gratitude and peace, we need to understand that the gratitude and peace comes when, first, so there are two steps I'm going to speak. First, when we direct our mind and heart not only on what we want or imagine that we need, but rather on what we have, what we already have. So not on what we need or we desire, but what we already have. I'm saying what we imagine that we need, because Nisargadatta Maharaj, a great sage, said that there are no needs, only desires. So we consider them that are being needs, but they are basically, tendencies of the ego, desires. Anyhow, so it's this shift from what we need or what we desire to what we have. And then the second point, the second step would be a shift to the awareness of what we are, from what we have. And what we have is not, again, it's not about the fact that I have rice, I have toilet paper and so on, but it's about this intimacy of being with yourself, or having that soothing values. but then we shift that awareness from them to just being. So when we are aware of what we already have, a wave of gratitude would embrace us. There is a beautiful story of a Zen monk who was robbed. A thief came in and took some things from his little place, and then he went outside seeing the moon. It was a beautiful full moon, and he just contemplated and just exclaimed, "Oh, if I could give him the moon." So showing that that is the real value. We want to steal or to possess different things, but then the feeling of gratitude is coming there. This can be in solitude or also when many people are around us. As I said, solitude is not a condition, a physical condition, but a state of consciousness ultimately, because it is possible to be solitary in our heart, to be in that intimacy in our heart, to honor that stillness while living in a crowd. And on the other hand, it's possible for somebody who is solitary to live in the crowds of his own thoughts, obsessions, fears, struggle, and so on. So, examples of gratitude for what we have. The quiet awareness of the flow of breath. Can bring us a brimming joy. We are feeling ourselves, we are filled ourselves with an overwhelming joy. Or the chords of a melody can bring a quiet satisfaction, or the rain, or the wind, a sense of fulfillment, a peace of the heart, or the touch of a loved one, or if you are by yourself, the touch of the sunlight on your body or on the carpet in front of you can bring a sense of perfection, a completeness, because of this sense of integration, of presence. So these can be seen as practices of welcoming the discrete, the ineffable, and can be seen like daily or momentary visits of grace and presence. We are visited by grace and presence in such moments. So you stop and take a deep breath of awareness. And then you may continue with a gentle breath of love. And it happens. So you realize that these gifts of grace and presence are there. We miss them just because we are not attentive. We do not hear their silent, loving calling. So more than this, these expressions are echoing our being values, these core values. And then we can say that pure consciousness, being, absolute grace, manifests through the funnel of our soul. So there is this connection with the heart, and in that, grace starts being abundant. And you see it, it's presence. Now it's love. Now it's compassion. So we are happy and we are grateful for what we have. And we have so many things. It's just about looking at them, learning to look at them. It's just the fear and attachment to limited parts of our being, to the shallow parts of our being, that make us ignore and forget about these gifts of grace. So a way of honoring these being values, being in intimacy with these being values. And then they are pointing to this wordless presence, being. I received an email some time ago from a Hridaya teacher, a very beautiful message, and I just want to share a little bit. She speaks about the privilege. She said, I consider to be lucky to live in this moment, and I consider a privilege to feel so deeply, to love so deeply, to suffer so deeply, even if it is not easy. So it's not about being optimistic or letting go or being positive. You can cry a lot out of compassion, of love, but sometimes also out of exhaustion. But she said, when I know who I am, once and forever, what to be worried about? What to be worried about? I love when I receive such messages. And she's from Italy. So she was, and she is still in that intense, challenging times. I'm going to conclude with some ideas about this self-awareness, or how it feels, this pure awareness. So moving from I'm full of peace or full of love to just being, how this would feel. And then I will invite you for other questions if there are. I will start this shift from unexperienced to being with a quote of Antonio Porcia. He said, when the superficial tires me, it wearies me so much that I need an abyss in order to rest. And indeed, this infinite abyss is embracing all our limitations and is regenerating. It is not from our personal power that we should deal with our fears, but from that abyss, which is the same presence of the heart. So we may ask how this means, how it feels, this self-awareness. Of course, it's not about feeling. It's the source of all feeling, this self-awareness, this presence. It's not an emotion. Emotion would be just a phenomenon which happens to me, but then I am. And this is like being stripped of everything. In the bottom of yourself, you dwell lovingly as divine presence, still, empty, free, full at the same time. And self-awareness is like a trial by fire. It is an absolute, it's a paradox because it's an absolute freedom, and at the same time it feels that we are compelled by these very core values, by this very fire, by this very inner light of truth, by this abyss. It's like you cannot live but in that. It's a fascination of a tremendous mystery. And this fascination of the tremendous mystery is the very definition of God. A great theologian, Christian theologian, Rudolf Otto, defined God as the mysterium tremendum et fascinans, which in Latin means the mysterium, the mystery in front of which we tremble. It's the unknown, but at the same time is fascinating. It's calling you, is fascinating you, and this is how pure awareness feels constantly. And this connection with the heart, this self-awareness is incompatible with shallow contentment, with blind acceptance of prejudices and opinions, with bourgeois life. It's not passive, it's a furnace of transformation. You are burning. It's a fire of clarity. We inquire, who am I? And in this, we are starting doubting and finally discarding all the dogmas, preconceived ideas, expectations, projections, the nakedness of being. We sometimes have a kind of dogmatic religiosity for our spiritual ideas, or it's an inertia. Again, the bumping, the buffers are working there, and it's like an inertia. We can hardly move. We like, of course, we like spiritual discourses, and this fire is there, but then somehow it seems that foundation is not shaken. Continuous self-awareness is actually essentially an absolute trust in ourselves. It is a loving look at the real. It is simply the heart stillness, unbroken by any thought, desire. And in this stillness, the heart sings endlessly the love for itself, the love for all, the love of this embrace, the love of this joy of being. It is not abstract. It is experiential. Try it. Just try it. or open to it. It's not even about trying. Dropping even the trying. And this self-awareness, asking who you are, is not anesthesia, it's not a sedative. It's a fire in which everything is burned. Old ideas, beliefs, what spirituality would be, and so on. This is the dark night of the spirit, St. John of the Cross. When you drop everything, just for the sake of this fire. Buddha said this after his enlightenment. He said, I gained nothing from supreme enlightenment. It is for that very reason it is called supreme enlightenment. Since it is quite late, I will stop now. I will stop with, I will conclude with a poem by Hafez. He said, plant so that your own heart will grow. Plant so that your own heart will grow. Sing because this is a food our starving world needs. Sing because this is a food our starving world needs. Laugh because that is the purest sound. Laugh because that is the purest sound. Now, if there are other questions, again, I see just messages related to technical details. Maybe I'm not looking where it's needed. So please raise your hand if there are other questions. If not, before concluding, let's have a moment of greeting each other. So if the team in France will help me to come to this view of all of us together, just for some moments. Of course, we will not be able to speak, all of us, but at least to see each other and silently greet each other. Till this is happening, I am also going to tell you that in the chat of this meeting, you'll find the whole program of the next week. So all the activities in Hridaya Yoga, and also you'll receive also notes from this satsang that were already published notes from the previous satsangs. This is a way in which you can maybe contemplate more and more easily, focus on the practices and review what is essential. It would be good if we also have the image, if it's possible, if we can do this. If we would see each other. Finally, some images also appearing. Yes, this is what we are waiting for. I see so many reasons for gratitude. Seeing each other. And let's conclude by just, well, being together, feeling this unity in yes, somebody says I'm viewing Elena's screen. I also am viewing Elena's screen. Maybe something is possible now. Yes, again, we are together. Let's feel this oneness in this fire. This fire can be expressed in so many ways, but let's just feel this connection in the heart. Essentially, we are opening ourselves to the same mysterious, unknown beauty. And let's honor this together. Thank you. Namaste. Blessings. With this we conclude our meeting. Keep the being very values.